At the pinnacle of his power, a man risks losing control. The world is not kind, so its kings become cruel. Murder is never mercy, it's never noble, and it's never redeemable. To the maniac, murder is an art form.
What is happening to God say something?
Welcome back to Visited by Voices Live. Truly live this time, not fake live like we've been all too often recently. I am joined today by the wonderful creative team from my publisher. How cool is that to say out loud? Fractured Mirror Publishing. And I want to lead off by just having the team introduce themselves. And then I'm going to tell a little bit of backstory about how we came together. And hopefully they'll tell it from their point of view, and it'll probably be vastly different. But Emily, why don't you take it?
Hi, I'm Emily. I am one of the 3 founding members of Fractured Mirror Publishing. Actually, Allison and I knew each other beforehand, and we came together. So I am one of the main editors here at Fractured Mirror. Thank you for having us on your show. Allison.
So hello. I'm Allison. I am the art director for Fractured Mirror. So I was the one in charge of bringing Lauren's book to life. I did the cover art and all of the interior book setting for Divide by Zero.
So all the cool sideways text and things that were a big surprise to me. That's all Allison.
I've been fighting for sideways chapter headings for a while, so I was very excited about it.
Oh, well, I'm glad I was the one who won then. Allison, in her own right, however, is an incredible writer. So, Allison, do some pimping before we start.
So, I have also published my own book. It was March 2021, I think we put that out, and it is called, I have it right here, it is called Pyrokinetic. It is a young adult urban fantasy story about a teenager who gets fire powers very unexpectedly.
And burns down a lot of shit.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah.
And some really dark things are going to happen in the next couple books with it as well.
I can support that. So horror conventions, specifically, actually, I guess not really horror conventions. Let's start over. Literary fantasy conventions.
Yeah.
I found myself going to one, which I'm normally, if I'm going to convention, it's because I want to like check out the vendor tables and leave as quickly as possible. because I've been going to like the media type conventions. I don't know, since I was, -6 or something. And so I found myself going to Kentucky of all places, which for someone from Jersey, that's an adventure. And it was driving no less. So it was like 8.5 hours across the country, seeing only highway, which is not exactly seeing America, or maybe unfortunately it is. And I go to this convention called Imaginarium. And I when I get there initially, I just bump into some friends, right? And part of my reasoning for going out there was just to hang out with friends that live in the area. But I also had this novel that I had complete, but I had no home for. And if you've been watching the previous installments on this channel, Road to Perihelion, you'll know a lot of that story already. We'll get back to some more of that story after this episode, but I was hoping to be able to kind of network. So I promptly got there, met up with some people, chatted with Paul Wilson because he'd been on the show like 2 months earlier. So we caught up for a moment. And then I walked the vendor room and I did this big loop. And in this corner of the loop, which makes no sense because you can't tell what I'm making here. I could be doing anything. But I get there's these 3 women behind a table and it looks like kind of, a young adult fantasy. So I'm like buzzing right by it. And that's how the weekend goes. So I go bowling. I do a bunch of other things with friends. There's a video on the channel. You can check that out. But on my very last day, right before I was about to leave, I did stop at the table. But there's an important part of the story that I've glossed over. There was a panel. And I don't even know what the panel... Oh, you know, it was about building an audience is what it was supposed to be about. But what it really was about was the moderator talking about his own work. Listen, I'm all for people being whoever they want to be creative, do everything. But I'm just have to say that he was dressed as a space pirate with a laser cannon on his shoulder. And take that for what you will. But I didn't agree with a bunch of the advice that he was giving. And if you know me for more than 10 seconds, you know that I'm not going to stay quiet. I have to kind of pipe in. And in the audience that day, and I knew this because she sat immediately behind a group of my friends who were sitting there. And if you know anything about panels at conventions, there's not a lot of people that show up. Generally speaking, a few really interested people and a few drunk people. And that's it. And there was a young lady who sat down behind them. And she seemed to be laughing as I got louder about some subjects I disagreed with. And she was one of the 3 young ladies behind the desk. She's also the young lady who's not here tonight to defend herself. That was Alex. And so I stopped at the table and just talked to some pretty amazing people. And the last place I expected to find a home for Divide by Zero was the first place I was comfortable with. And you guys didn't publish horror.
Yeah, we had, I think soon after you, we had our first sci-fi horror come out. And I only put it in quotes because it's very sci-fi, but there is a horror aspect. But yeah, we had never touched horror before that.
So Matt's book was the first?
Matt's book was technically the first, although it's often billed as sci-fi.
Yeah, it's definitely dark sci-fi, if nothing else. A little strip stream and a little bit meta, maybe a lot meta. But on your website, I remember reading your website. I went home and I'm like, I'm going to check them out. You were one because we come back from a convention, you come back with like a Rolodex of cards and pamphlets, and you immediately throw out 99% of them. I'm never going to follow up on this, so. But you guys were the one I wanted to check out, and I look at your website and it was like, I think it explicitly said you weren't interested in horror. So I'm like, well, I don't know. But I sent an email anyway. And you said, well, no, send it. And I did. And it worked out. So was it a conscious decision to allow horror in the door, or?
I think we had always assumed we get horror submissions because we are speculative fiction and that falls in there. But I had the horror I had ever read was like a handful of Stephen King and vampire novels. So I didn't feel well versed, and Alex didn't feel very well versed in horror. So we had it there, but we didn't know if we'd ever actually take a horror novel at that point. So I think you had also given Alex a copy of Blue Eel, I
I had.
believe. So she had already been reading that, I think, by the time you had emailed us. And so she already had a feel for your style and your characters. And I think that was definitely a big thing that played into us taking the leap into horror.
That's encouraging. Because you know what, I find that when we talk about that a decent amount on this channel, I remember Ramsey Campbell talking about like what people think is horror and what horror really is not being the same thing. It's also the reason at the beginning of the videos you'll see I have my definition of horror, and that it is about a range of dark emotions. It's not just about trying to scare you or disgust you, although both those things are valid. Hopefully horror can be more, otherwise at some point it's going to ground right to a halt. People are just going to get tired, or we'll just go through that cycle where people get burnt out, and then 20 years later, like, you get another wave. But if we're going to grow, we have to be about more. And that's the thing, guys. I wouldn't call Divide by Zero a scary novel necessarily. I think it can be intense, but I don't think it's scary. I'm not looking for the boo.
Yeah, I don't think it didn't strike me as scary either. You know, you mentioned your definition of horror, and it reminds me of something someone said to me once, and you might totally disagree with it because you know horror, but their definition stuck with me, and I feel like I see that more when I see horror. They said that horror novels are about things adults are afraid of, which now that's a very broad and obviously not very scientific definition, but that way you don't always get the boo. Sometimes they're intense and scary because they speak to something else. But anyway, you're right. Yours is definitely not scary in the sense of like, oh God, I need to like cover my eyes. But it is intense.
Well, there was a point where Miriam wanted me to get more graphic, and I said no. I'll just say
yeah,
that.
she did. She did. She yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, she definitely wanted my hands in the spaghetti. But I think the thing about horror that could be, I think, eye-opening for a lot of people who are, again, into speculative fiction, which is, I mean, listen, that even the phraseology there tends to lead you in the wrong direction in some ways, right? Because it's not always about speculating about the future or the past or whatever. Even that phrasing just can be limiting. But horror is really just about anything that makes the modern person uncomfortable in any way. That's why it's a dark emotion, and that can scare you, or it might bewilder you. It may make you feel like you're out of time. It can make you feel any number of things. Lost is a big one for me. Also, another thing is loss of identity is a big part of it. I've said, and this plays right into the Divide by Zero thing, is all fear, all these fears or anxieties have to be based in some real world example that's just exaggerated for dramatic effect. So in many ways, this is a book about identity theft without spoiling anything.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that. There's two instances where identity is definitely not just instances, but two big parts of it where identity is a massive issue in the story.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So I think that's kind of, I think if people realize that if that approach is taken, they're not going to be dealing with just lusty vampires or The Walking Dead necessarily. There's so much more possibility, and it is being explored by a lot of people. I'm far from exclusive in that. I'd say the majority of horror published is extremely creative and accessible beyond what people think it is. But because horror tends to be, we tend to think of the movies, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, of course, yeah.
And I know Allison is always watching those mid-70s Italian gore gothics, but not the rest of us, right?
Yeah, all the time.
No. Oh,
but
that's funny.
I just wanted to make her make a sound. That's all. I think that's gonna be my goal this whole night, is to make Allison speak.
Make Allison talk. I like that.
That's good. So I sent in the submission to you guys, and
Yeah.
it wasn't a long turnaround because I've had long turnarounds, and we got together on a Skype or a Zoom meeting, something.
Something like that. I think Google Hangouts is what we tend to use. Yeah.
And we just
Yeah.
made sure we were on the same page,
Yeah.
which I think is something that's unique to the small press, right? I mean, you'd never do that
Definitely.
with a big New York house. There wouldn't be a back and forth to make sure.
No, but that fit is so important, I think, especially with small press. You work very closely together, and there's a lot of say from the author where that they wouldn't get sometimes in a big press, and so you have to make sure you fit in some way. I mean,
Yeah, I find headspace to be like the most important part of this process. That's why I also think I'm going to eternally be a small press guy. I think it's just I can't really imagine not being on the same wavelength as my publisher. And we don't have to agree about everything. Disagreements can lead to beautiful, beautiful things, but we have to at least be speaking the same language. And so, like when we talked, I think I laid out some concerns, and you came back, and we discussed them. A lot of that ended up in the contract, and it all made sense, but it was very human.
yeah.
And that was really important to me. I've dealt with a decent number of presses in my career between the anthologies and the novels, and it was actually really, really refreshing that you guys were dead honest about where you are as a company and what you could do and what you couldn't do, and it was just the bullshit was gone.
Yes, we've learned that you're a very no bullshit kind of guy, and I like
A
it.
little bit, right?
Yes, it can be intimidating, but it's really great. It gets things done, and I like it. But yeah, I think what you said is so valid. Like cutting that bullshit is so important because Allison and I, when we started the company, we weren't expecting to get submissions. We had one book to publish, and then we were like, let's just open for submissions. And, a lot poured in, and we were like, oh shit, what are we going to do? And Alex too. Alex joined us really early on. And we learned that we have to be honest. We were literally brand new. We didn't even have a book to show people. And we've just kept that a policy. So I think that helps. That way, there's no expectations that can't be met on either side, ideally.
And it also puts the onus back on the writer, I think, which is good because that's reality in the small press is that the writer should be doing their part, not just of promotion, but of awareness and helping to shape the thing. And, we all have those, we'll all hear of people at least that wanted to passively just hand it off and say, okay, you guys run with it now. And that's not how this works.
Yeah.
So you have to figure out how you platform yourself. You have to figure out how to maintain a public persona that's not going to put people off, which is why my Twitter is like ridiculously anemic.
That's fair.
Every once in a while I scream at people to stop being political, and that's about all. That's besides promoting my books, that's about all I do.
Hey, it works.
Well, hey, listen. I think the things that divide us as a people are all negative, no matter how you come at them. I mean, it'd be a better world if we could all agree on everything, but it's not going to happen. So guess what? We can at least be civil about it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a fair point. Jeez.
So it was basically from the time you accepted the book to the book shows up as a real thing is about 14 months or so.
I would say it was about, because I think the convention was in July. By the time so we signed you around the end of the year, so you're about 14 months. That would sound right. I think we had planned to get your book out in October. It ended up being the beginning of December or middle of December. Excuse me.
It was like
Christmas.
It was Christmas.
Okay, so that whole Black Christmas vibe. Let's have Krampus and all the scarier things.
Well, it worked out though because everyone was not working that day when I started screaming into the void that the book was out, and
that was secretly the plan all along.
Sure, it was. It was just one holiday later.
Yeah, it's totally fine.
Actually, two. I guess
two because Thanksgiving is.
I made Thanksgiving not a thing.
That's totally fair. Yeah. we bit off a lot last year. I think our goal was something like 9 or 10 books. I think we ended up with 7, which we some of them. I mean, they're all getting done, but some of them were pushed, so everything was kind of behind. We were ambitious. So yeah, yours closed out the year.
Well, hopefully we ended on a high note.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, this was a book that the other part of this is that it had to fit into a wider quote unquote universe, but it's very episodic, so that in that respect there was no problems. You didn't have to read the previous books. That eventually is going to change, but right now it's still the case. But selling it there and having to constantly be kind of like wary to maintain continuity between the books was kind of something that I had to work with the editor to try and make sure we were always kind of like okay there, because some things might have seemed okay to curtail, but then it's kind of paying off something from Blue Eel or from Bleak December. And certainly the epilogue just was you guys had to just trust me because there was no way you were going to understand context. So it was like,
Right.
all right.
We did trust you. Although I will say, as an outsider, I was a secondary editor on your novel, but as the main, I loved reading yours and Miriam's comments back and forth, because sometimes they were comments and you were like, nope, this is important. This is in the other book, or this is part of this. And it was obviously, we were mixing some context, but they were fun to read.
Well, before we started the editing process, there was a back and forth in which I was like, I'm a very direct person. She's like, I am more direct.
You are actually both very direct. I've known Miriam since we were in 6th or 7th grade. We went to writing camp together. And so I know she's very direct and you're very direct. And I was like, this could be potentially explosive, but she is very talented as an editor and you are very talented as a writer. So I also thought it would be actually a really good combination in some ways. So I don't know.
Well, I mean, like I said to you at the end of the process, I think she did a really, really, really good job. And I have said this publicly, so I don't think it's a problem. I don't think he watches the show. So the editor of Blue Eel and I had a really bad relationship.
Oh, really?
Through the process. Yeah. There is a cat. This is Kazi, the European cat.
Oh.
But and she's from Kosovo.
Nice. That's cool.
Yeah. And so I've seen when those things go left when they should go right. And that's why I went from the very beginning, was like, I got to let her know I'm very direct and I'm going to be protective of certain things. I'll work to make them work better in good faith, but hello. It was an important part of the process. So it was funny. There was times when we definitely butted heads on subjects, and that's okay. I think we both realized it was okay to not to fight for our corner.
And I think that helps make a novel stronger. You have obviously the person who birthed the novel, who has this strong feeling for it, and someone whose whole goal is to make it work as well as possible for readers. So yeah, I think fighting for your corner is really powerful, as long as it's respectful, obviously.
Yeah, and this remained respectful, even when there was those moments that we were clearly not going to come to the middle, and you had to step in and be like, okay, here's what we're going to do.
I felt like I was in my classroom again. Children.
Well, where's a chair I can throw?
Yeah, you need one. I don't know. I got to find one for you.
Are you going to do this all night? You can tell she's a street cat from a major city.
Of course, I could totally tell. Yeah, she's cute.
She's insane. So the book gets edited, and we whittle it down to its best form. And at that point, I didn't know what the book was physically going to look like. You had sent out a thing, hey, what's your main ideas? And I gave you for cover art and whatever. And I gave these very vague notes because here's the thing. I am not a visual artist. I'd love to be. It would be like a dream for me, but I suck. So no.
I feel that.
So it's for me to even get too involved. There were certain things I liked. I felt the duality was a really important concept, but I didn't know what to do with that. I just knew it was important.
Mm-hmm.
And when I saw the ultimate cover of the book, which I think all of you have seen way too much out there, the dividing line is really cool because on first glance you don't even necessarily see it. It's really actually really obvious as I'm holding the book right now. But if you look at it full on, it's less obvious. And I think that's really cool because that's kind of how the book plays. It kind of mirrors it. And I also love the fact that making the title the main piece of art in a way. I thought was really, really cool. Also, I'm a sucker for anything on a slant. So
I did pretty good.
Yeah, anything that's crooked is just like awesome to me. Also love how this looks next to the first 2 books in the series. I mean, it looks really like it's at home. So this is where Allison has to talk.
I have to, yes.
Yeah.
No, honestly, this is like one of my favorite covers that we've done. I feel like the contrast of the dark and then the like stark white of the text on it. And like you said, it's like the main part of it is that cover. And I do think like each cover or each book kind of has its own logo that we end up using. And I think this one looks really cool. When you had sent me the notes, you mentioned the duality of the kind of pristine city and then the more apocalyptic side of it. And I immediately had that vision of doing the divide sign on there. And I think it came to light really, really well, I think. Lots of nice blood splatters on there too to make it kind of subtle. But I'm really happy with it.
The blood splatter thing was interesting. We did wonder, Lauren, I think you messaged me. I was like, would that violate terms of agreement for one of the places we publish? And thankfully it didn't. Thankfully it didn't, because I, like you, Allison, and like you, Lauren, I love the cover. But that was a concern. We were worried.
Yeah, it's well, Blue Whale's original cover art has much less blood on it, but kind of used similarly in a way, but there's much less of it, and that limited some advertising on a certain platform. So I guess like any social media out there anywhere, none of it really makes any sense. So you just got to go with what makes the book look best. Mm-hmm. And I love this art. And I got to tell you, the hardcover, the art just pops even more than the paperback. The paperback is a really handsome edition, but that hardcover is the best looking anything my work has appeared in, period. So, yeah. And then you open the thing. This can come back to Emily for just a second, but we're going to get back to Allison, so don't hide.
Oh, I won't hide too much.
Okay. So late in the process, I'd actually, the book that follows this is already written, and I one thing I did there was move the invocation, which is my prologue, to before the title page, but I hadn't done it to this at the time I submitted it to you, and I was like, oh wait, can we do that? And I was really expecting no. I was expecting the answer like, there's some industry standards we're not going to break for you, Lauren. But the answer being back immediately like, yeah, that sounds cool.
Well, yeah, because one of the things, like, I've never seen a book like that. So I was like, I don't know how this is going to look, but like, we do try. I know we have one other book, Matt's book, who Matt was on your show. I don't know if you've looked at the inside of that book, but there is weird formatting throughout it. We
very
definitely
House of Leaves. Yeah,
it is very House of Leaves. And I think something we strive for, and I know Allison loves doing, is weird things. So yeah, I think it was totally like, we'll give it a shot. We can't lose. So
Jessica is saying, this is where I jump in. I absolutely love the art in this book. It's so incredibly beautiful. And Griffin
thank you.
Saying, I like the blood splatters look like coffee stains.
Oh, awesome.
If we can relate it back to coffee, I'm here for that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the book was, I don't drink coffee, but the book was definitely fueled by caffeine. So that's probably a lot of meta going on there too.
There you go.
But so was kind of the cool. I'm going to use the paperback as an example because I don't want to handle the hardcover that much. But so the book kind of cold opens, and look at that beautiful, beautiful, beautiful typesetting choice. So, Allison, how did you decide on the look of this book?
I am very fueled by typography and like finding the perfect font. Like I will literally like find 6 different fonts that I like and try each of them out on a cover and see which one kind of really fits the vibe of the book. And you know, I love typewriter fonts and things like that. And this one just really popped and just showed like kind of the shift in everything. Like there's some kind of double letters in some of the text. And And like I tried that font and I'm like, yep, this is it. This is absolutely it. And so echoing that like through the chapter headings and then rotating them, which is very unusual. I haven't really seen that much in books ever. And having it on like that left justified part of the chapter headings, just I think it really stood out. I was a big fan of it.
I am too, but I think Emily may cringed a little bit because it's just like, yeah, it was a nightmare. Thanks.
No, actually, I was gonna say, Allison, isn't your actual degrees in like typography and setting and
So kind of, I have let's see, my bachelor's is actually in professional writing, but then I went and got a master's in information design and communication. So it's really all about like print design and print work and things like that.
yeah.
So
And
it lends itself very well to publishing.
and plus you have wanted, as she said earlier, I think to you, Lauren, Allison, you've been trying, we've had like I don't know how many authors, and you've wanted a sideways thing forever,
This is
and
like
no
the third or
one's.
fourth try I've had.
I know no one likes it.
Nobody was.
Wait, the other writers objected?
Mhm.
Yes, she's tried so hard every time.
Guys. That's not right. But that's good because you wouldn't have wanted to do it again if someone did it before me. So, but you might have come up with something else equally cool. But
Well, I do think that also speaks a lot about our collaborative process, though. That like we've been able to try things like this with different authors, and we've, so, like they can veto a few things within reason. But if they were just like, nah, I'm not kind of feeling that one too much, let's try this instead. I mean, it's just I love being able to collaborate with the authors and let them kind of see it as it comes to life and help bring their vision to life, not just what our vision of it is.
well, there was very little I needed to communicate with you because I was loving like I felt like this book was going to be a hard thing to get a lot of people's heads around, and the fact that like you were going experimental, but not in such a way that the book looked like someone threw up on a page, right? Because it's easy to do that. It's easy to over format, and the fact that you got it, and I think all you guys got it. That's the scary thing is that it should have been a harder sell as a book simply because there's kind of a lot going on, and it's probably a little longer than people would expect for this type of thing. Not hugely, but I mean, this is the kind of thing you'd expect to be an 80,000 word novel. It's 103. And I think it uses that extra space appropriately, but I think just if you were in conversation with a publisher, they might be like, really? You think so? Because I'm thinking not ever.
Not ever.
Maybe you should go drown in a shallow pool. That's that kind of thing. I've had some great experiences with publishers. We'll talk.
I can tell. This sounds like fun.
No, my biggest problem actually is, and this was my big fear in those 14 months, is that I've had a lot of experiences of either short stories sold to anthologies or even a novel in one case, whereas like the piece sells and then the publisher dies. Either like it just goes out of business, or literally the person in charge like is no longer around.
That one's peculiar and probably not.
It's happened more than once to me.
I
started thinking I was doing it, but you guys are still here, so I guess if there was a curse, you've broken it. But so it's always scary. I mean, that's the blessing and the curse. We're talking about the blessing of the small press is that you can do things, and you don't have to worry about fitting industry standards quite as much.
Right.
But on the other hand, yeah, I mean, the small press is fragile, and I think a lot of the people out there, I know reading the names of the people who've out in the chat, there's a decent amount of them that I know own the book. And the reality is like every one of those purchases matters hugely because that's how fragile the small press is. One book doesn't go right. It makes a massive impact on a company.
Oh yeah, definitely. And just even just generally speaking, the economy shit right now. It's a battle for the press and the authors. Definitely. We've been pretty lucky, I think, overall with our books. Allison, wouldn't you agree?
I think so.
Would you agree, rather? Yeah, I think
absolutely.
I think we've been pretty lucky. We've gotten some really great authors, obviously yourself included, that have really helped keep people's eyes focused on us and our authors. And so I think that's a really powerful thing and useful for us as we grow. So, and hopefully as our authors grow, whatever they do and whatever they do next.
So this book comes out on Christmas.
Yeah.
I will say that I was not the one to notice that it happened. I had my people were constantly on, like, waiting on bated breath, and then I get a message in the morning from a Twitter message in the morning on Christmas saying, "Hey, just ordered my copy."
Yeah, so I think something a lot of people, and then you told us it was available already. I think something that people don't realize about small presses is, and I don't know if this works the same with big presses, they probably have a lot more control, but when we submit them to our platforms, they tell us it could take up to 72 hours for your book to be available, and we get an email. But so we don't want to tell our authors, hey, it's available, then they send out something and then no one can find their book. So yeah, your people caught it before we got a chance to. You guys caught it early. It came out before the 30 or 72 hours. Yeah, so you messaged me. I got a message Christmas morning, I think. Hey, my book is there. Oh, that's awesome.
Well, it certainly wasn't a bad thing, no matter who delivered the message. But there'd been a group of watchers of the channel and the greater community who'd been kind of really waiting. And I mean, the conversation had changed at different points. I'm like, I think it's going to be around Halloween, and then it became, well maybe Thanksgiving-ish. But it kept going from holiday to holiday, and so the fact that it happened and everyone was home, so the message kind of spread fast, and I think it was really heartening. And I've thanked these people, everyone who played the point of retweeting, and the amazing photos of the books in people's hands in their homes, and one at a bookstore, which is still kind of like sending shivers up the back of my neck. Because that is the big challenge for any small press, is that you can't really just get into the brick and mortar very easily.
Right.
And it's not impossible, but it's not easy. So it's all, every book that's ordered through a like brick and mortar retailer gives a little more confidence to that retailer to maybe take a chance on it.
Mm-hmm.
And as much as Amazon are the big guys, and certainly the press trail that follows Amazon is the most desirable in the business, no question about it.
Oh yeah.
The fact is, everyone who went to Barnes and ordered it, or their local bookstore. That's why I have a tweet chain that has like all the major places you can order the book.
Nice.
And it's so important, though, that people, whatever they're most comfortable with, they go with. But it's also important that they understand that the future for Fractured Mirror as a whole is if you could get one book to make that jump, it makes making the rest of them that much easier.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, Allison, do you want to speak to that? Like, I mean, I think a lot has to do with, well, obviously the power of the book is really important. The power of the author's viewers or friends or followers is incredibly important. And then also, I think the third major part is how it stands out. And that's why I asked you, Allison, if you so say, because I think there are books that you've picked up before at small bookstores, and you're like, oh, this looks really cool. It doesn't look like it was put together very well. Still a great book. And I think that has a lot to do with how to get your books where you want them to be, like stores. You get the stores noticing them, especially the small ones. I don't know.
I mean, that's something I do like really think about when I go through these designs for any of our covers that we do, is what's going to make this stand out among all the other books out there. And I have seen like some other indie published books where it's just not quite as professional looking as it could be. And I think that makes a big difference. I think that's something that we as a team do really well, is bringing that professional element and making it just really enticing for the readers. Really bring them in.
Well, yeah, because we get these great authors like Lauren and Divide by Zero, one of our first marketed as horror books we've received.
Well,
yeah, how would that? Maybe someday. That sounds good. Like, I think we get these great books, and in order to do them justice, to get them to grow. Because yeah, at some point your following will only do so much unless they all buy like 10 copies each, which would be cool. But at some point we got to get you further, and you have to get you further, and your book does it. It's a powerful story. So yeah, we have to couple it with Allison's skill set, which is massive.
So it's a beautiful book, and it starts showing up in people's houses, and mostly through the mail. And those in I start hearing, well, I'm waiting for the hardcover when. And that becomes like the bane of my existence in a way, because I don't want to tell people just buy the paperback, but because I know like those who want the hardcover are going to be rewarded for that. But that plays a real role in this whole mix, because different people want it in different forms. So whether it's the ebook or it's the paperback or the hardcover, we have to feed all those audiences. And one thing I love is that you made all of them available. Because at the same time, too, because it might not be exactly a standard practice, but if the book is going to have a chance to succeed, it has to have the widest chance to succeed, right? And the people who want the premium that go alongside their Blue Eel hardcover can have that. But the people who maybe say, you know what, I'm $16, I'm in, but 30, I'm not, which I respect that. The most beautiful thing in the world is a beaten up copy of anything. You want a paperback that looks like the spine has been through the wash. That's a beautiful, beautiful book.
I agree 100%.
But so you want those people to have that and not have to wait too, by the way, because small press, again, it's not like the major publishers where the hardback comes back 6 months later, the paperback comes back and you get another bite at the apple. You basically get one bite of the apple with the small press.
Yeah.
So that's there. And I think that's a really, really genuinely great thing. Do you want to speak to that decision? It seems like you've done it all along.
We have done it all along. The only books that are not also in hardback are the middle grade and anthologies. But we decided early on, where I think Allison and I are both lovers of hardbacks. Like, I love hardbacks. Give me a hardback any day. I'll spend the money for it. I just think they look pretty. But the more economical sense is obviously to have a paperback because they're cheaper and an ebook because they're cheaper. So like you said, we're very aware that small presses really have one shot to get things out there. So if we wanted to do it, we had to do all three. And I think the paperback, the hardcover is really just for our love of hardbacks. We have an author coming out next year. It was like, you don't have to do a hardback. It doesn't matter. And I was like, we're doing a hardback. Like, we like hardbacks. So yeah, I think that was more for our love, Allison and my love of hardbacks. Yeah.
Well, I'm a convert, because in the case of this book, I think it just the book just goes to that next level with the hard binding and that wonderful slip sleeve that's just amazing. And it all, even I'm not going to gloat over my own book. That sounds so stupid, but it's beautiful. It's an incredibly beautiful book. And, it took me, it's funny that it took 14 months for the book to be born from manuscript to published copy, because it also took 14 months to write.
Oh, that's interesting.
Isn't it?
Yeah, that's kind of cool.
I guess you could have like 3 kids in that time, but that's a whole different issue. One slightly premature.
Yeah.
But you spend 14 months, you spend over a year writing something and rewriting it and working different passages. And especially because I'm not entirely sane. So I tend to rehearse the book over and over and over and over before I actually write it. And to put that kind of work in, you kind of on the other side are hoping for the hope that the book will come out looking like the amount of work that you put in for those 14 months. And like that hardcover, that's 14 months of me writing. It really is.
Yes.
And so that's the most amazing thing to me.
Well, that means a lot to us. I know that means a lot to Allison.
For sure.
She worked hard on the cover and just the whole thing. But I think they should reflect the amount of work you put in as the author. I think that's a really important trademark of a good book. A bad cover will stop a book from getting where it needs to be.
Sure. And I think a cool cover is cool. And then the person's going to flip it open to just flip through, and they're going to see really great typesetting and just surprising choices inside this book, and I just think it's astonishingly well positioned. Griffin has a question for you. Is the publishing name Fractured Mirror a homage to Agatha Christie's The Mirror Cracked from Side to Side?
No, it's not, and I didn't actually realize there was a reference there. So now I like Agatha Christie, but I've never read that. So now I'm gonna have to read that and see. But no, it's not. I feel like I want to tell people it is now, though, because that sounds literary and fun.
She's gonna completely steal that, Griff. So it is.
I won't. I that wouldn't be very nice. But no, it's not. So I don't know. Para told you, but I had kind of bandied about that name. I always wanted to start a publishing press from the time I was little. Like that was like a big dream of mine. And I think I bought the domain name for that about 10 years ago when I was like first in college. So I was like, this is going to be the name of my publishing company one day. I just didn't know if it would ever actually happen. And it definitely came from my teenage angst. No one knows who I am thing. You know, I was like,
no, Mom, I won't turn down the Nirvana.
Yeah, there you go. And I was like, I look into the mirror and it's not who I am. And I think that's kind of like how it started. And then it was like, oh, speculative fiction. Things aren't always what they seem. There's more than what meets the eye. So that's kind of how it evolved. But now I could throw in Agatha Christie there too.
Or Lucio Fulci. The great Italian filmmaker Lucio Fulci has a film called When Alice Broke the Looking Glass.
Oh, I like that. See, now I'm going to have to look for that too.
If you're expecting something quite as literary as that, when you see the film, you might be disappointed.
That's okay.
It's an amazing film, but no. Grissy Crops says, I'm French and not an Amazon user, so my quest for American books was by the intermediary of secondhand booksellers in the UK. Dude, follow me on Twitter because I have in that list of links, there is one for you for the UK.
I know there's major UK bookstores sell. But technically secondhand bookstores, because of one of our places we sell through, as long as they use that to order some books, they'll have no problem getting it as well. And most bookstores order through this company. So,
yeah.
But please reach out to us if you're having trouble. Like we'll find a way to get you a book if you really want it.
And you do. Maybe more than one.
All of them.
There's at least 2 books that are represented in this square that you're watching right now that need to be purchased. Mm-hmm. So now, I mean, the book's out, it's selling. We watched the Amazon rank go, like the chart waving, which is actually waving like I want it to wave, so it's good.
Perfect.
It's one of those things. Like it's hard to say what the future is for anything once you release it into the wild.
Yeah.
And obviously, you guys are moving on to other projects as well. Not that you ever abandon what's already out there, but there does come a certain point for all of us when like the focus starts to turn onto the new sexy thing, right?
Yeah, unfortunately.
Well, yeah, no,
that's the way life works. Yeah,
it's part of the whole life cycle of art, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I have to say, this whole experience from meeting you and again initially passing you up, simply because I never thought what I am from a glance thought was a young adult fantasy publisher. I just thought there's no chance here to you guys releasing the most beautiful edition of my work to date. And I mean, I've been, if you count the anthologies, I've been published by PS Publishing in the UK, which are like an ultra sophisticated horror publisher that wins Stoker's like every year. I've worked with some great folks, Cutting Block Books with the late Patrick Beltran, who sadly we lost a little while back. I mean, I've worked with some really great people, but this moment is going to stick with me no matter what comes later, because the release of this book, as unexpected as it came on the day it came, it felt right and it felt like home. And I never expected to have to drive 8.5 hours across the country to Kentucky to make that happen. But I'm going to be eternally grateful that I did.
So are we actually. When you were telling the story before, we were like, you were the best thing that came out of Kentucky for us at that convention. Like, I mean, that was our first convention, our first foray into the wild beyond our computer screens. And you were definitely the best thing to come out of that. Like, we were like, we made this great connection. And obviously it turned into something beautiful. So,
and it so easily could have not happened. That's the crazy thing.
yeah.
Because I don't think you guys were at that point sold on horror yet anyway. And I think that I was not sold on a fantasy publisher, which is not fair. You guys do more than fantasy. But I'm saying a glance at your table. That's what.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And that's kind of what you were marketing yourself to the audience at hand too, because that was mostly I'd say
Mostly,
fantasy.
yeah. I would say mostly, yeah. Well, I think at that point we had mostly done. We were super new at that point. I think we had what, 5, 6 books out, Allison, and a lot of them were fantasy. We didn't even have a sci-fi out. We didn't have Iluros out, which is our only sci-fi at the moment. So we only had fantasy.
Yeah, we had 5 out at that point, just getting ready to release Iluros.
Yeah, so we had fantasy and dystopian. So yeah, we were not like we didn't have a lot to look at the time.
And the other part about that that meeting, which was really important, is I came away from that table with a copy of Allison's book.
Yes, you did.
And that was important to me because even though you were the only ones of the publishers, because I made some great contacts of other people there, but the publishers, you're the only ones that I had any interest in researching coming out of there because you guys were great. But you don't know until you read the work, right? Because if you don't read at least something, you're probably in trouble. And so in a major way, Allison's novel played a huge role in this connection ever happening too, because had I picked up the book and it had been awful, this wouldn't, I would just been like, well, that's where they're at. Cool. They're nice enough people, but I'll check back in on them in a few years, see what's going on. But instead I found myself weirdly compelled to a book that I shouldn't have liked. I mean, just on a technical level, like I'm almost 50-year-old, bald, fat, New Jersey guy. The idea of a teenage angst-filled pyrokinetic dark superhero story. I'm trying not to I don't know. I don't want to miscategorize the novel.
I definitely classify it as an urban fantasy.
Cool. That works for me. But I read the thing in just a few sittings, and it was way more than I anticipated. And I messaged you, and I also left an Amazon review at that time. But it made me feel really secure about saying, okay, maybe I will query and see if they're really interested and that was an important part of it. So thank you, Allison.
It's awesome. Nice job, Allison. We're proud of you.
Good thing we didn't hand him the other book.
Oh, that's funny. No, Allison, that was obviously it was a good choice, but you picked a good choice, Lauren. You picked a good
Well,
book.
I remember the conversation was something like, well, we don't have horror, but there's some really dark stuff that happens in this one. And I think Allison was like mortified, like for a moment, like, wait, I'm gonna have to talk. And then, no, that was the highlight from the writing standpoint. Because again, I got to hang out with some friends and win at game bowling and stuff, and that's all awesome. But for the professional side of it, like meeting you guys was like really the only good thing that came out of the convention. Yeah, I hate to say it, but it kind of sucked.
Something good.
The convention kind of sucked.
We've not returned to that one. We met you, which was great, and actually we got together with Alex for the second time ever in person. We had never met, we'd only met her one other time before, and we met another publisher who they've been really helpful to us, Jumpstart Press. But yeah, I will say, like, professionally, you were one of our, you were a boon to us. Ending up working with us was a huge boon. So yeah, that's one of the best things that came out of that convention.
It was all worth it. It's all love.
Yeah, definitely.
So guys out there in the chat, if you have any questions, let's throw them at the team. We're almost to the hour point, so we're not going to be on for all that much longer. But if you have any questions that you need asked, go ahead. My question for you guys: what's the future coming for Fractured Mirror?
Ooh, we got some fun stuff coming out for you this year. We were lucky enough, we don't want to give too many details, but we were lucky enough to acquire another small press is closing. Unfortunately, we acquired this amazing YA trilogy, Polish folklore trilogy from them. We have, what else do we have, Allison? We got another, oh, we got a lot of things. We got 2 middle grade books, which a lot of your fans would probably not be huge fans of. Because you're horror and these are middle grade, they're meant for children. But we got some of those.
I think there's going to be a healthy proportion of the audience that identifies as children.
That's fair. That's fair. And honestly, like these, one's a sequel to another. One is, I don't know. I'm excited about the other one, the robot one too. I don't want to say again too much about it, but that one's fun. What else do we have, Allison? We have like a bunch.
Potentially another anthology, correct?
Yes, potentially another anthology by the editor of the previous anthology. So another Dream Punk. We're excited about that because Dream Punk is really fun. And we have another, again, maybe not your cup of tea. It's a YA princess fantasy, but it's a Middle Eastern author, and there's a lot of, it's not European based. So there's a lot of really neat, if you're a fantasy lover, even though it is a young adult one, it is seriously a fun ride because it's different. Fantasy feels so different and so fresh because it's not Western European based. I don't think we have any other horror coming out this year, but actually around the same time your book came out was another horror book, Dream Thieves. We had 2 come out in December because we just wanted a darken Christmas for everyone, I guess. I don't know what our plan was. So yeah, we have a handful of things coming out that we're excited about. And we open up queries sometime in the spring. So maybe we'll have horror again next year.
Maybe we'll.
Maybe we will, yeah.
Griffin does have a question.
Yeah.
What are your top 3 favorite fantasy books? He's a big reader, so this he probably will actually read what you suggest. No pressure.
No pressure. That's really hard. Pressure. Do you want to go first, Allison?
Yeah, I'm literally like looking over my bookshelf, like thinking about,
because I'm looking at mine too.
Honestly, I gravitate to a lot of like science fiction kind of stuff. I love like Andy Weir. Like The Martian is one of my favorite books I've ever read. Project Hail Mary was phenomenal as well, and then also the Expanse series. Slowly making my way through those. But typically, I go for more like young adult fantasy, apocalyptic vibe kind of stuff. Like I did love the Hunger Games, and a lot of my writing is inspired by like Hunger Games and Maze Runner. I know one series that I love is a kind of Beauty and the Beast young adult retelling, and it's called the fact that I can't remember the name of it because Emily has the copy of it sitting like right next to her.
A Curse So Dark and Lonely. I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah, she still has my copy of that first one.
I do.
Yeah, I definitely tend to gravitate towards young adult fantasy.
I like those books too. They're a lot of fun. I will say though, I think right now, so one of my favorite books, and this is a newer one, it's fantasy, The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. She wrote The Night Circus, which I also loved, but there was something about The Starless Sea that was just about it's pure, obviously it's pure fantasy, but it really seems to delve into the creation of stories, and it's super beautiful. It's just beautiful. One of my other top 3 fantasy, and I'm going to tell you right now, this is not a well-written book. I would never say these are well-written, but they are seriously my favorite trilogy ever. The Black Jewels trilogy by Anne Bishop. Dark fantasy. It's dark, and there's a lot of tropes, but I don't know. This thing I read, like I've read it a million times. So the Black Jewels trilogy. And then I think my third, she writes a lot of short stories. Kelly Link. My favorite short story about her is Walks with the Snow Queen, I think. I think it's called Journeys with the Snow Queen, something like that. It is a powerful short fantasy, and a lot of her stories are amazing. I think those are my 3 favorite top fantasies right now.
Amazing. Yeah. I'm not going to be able to answer that question at all.
Do you not read any fantasy?
No, I really don't. So my friend Jeffrey Bradley is constantly throwing things at me. The Expanse series is something that actually he's just shrewishly trying to like, screw into my brain as something I need to read. But to be honest with you, I have to keep reading horror because you have to know what's going on. Like you always hear the trope of you should read beyond. You should always, but you want to know what? I also find that those people are mistaken in how much you have to keep abreast of what's actually going on in your field. And I, I have a full-time gig, which is probably more full-time plus. And then there's my, 1,000 words a day writing. I mean, I don't have a lot of time in my life. I read a lot of nonfiction because I'm constantly interested by bullshit that shouldn't interest me. So it's kind of like, oh, wow, what about let's read a real account of mid-60s Cold War chess. And I'll be like, yeah, I need to know about that. So I'll read some ridiculously long thing about that. Or what are tectonic plates really? I think I need to know. So I'm always like kind of, I don't know, trapped into reading a bunch of things at once. And then I can be suckered in. If I go to a used bookstore and they have old, and I mean old, really pulpy paperbacks, it's like, I'm done. I'm done. Like it'll be a book about like Bigfoot from like 1958, and I'll be like, okay, this is clearly something I'm gonna have to read tonight.
Clearly, I understand that.
Yeah, so it's the other thing is I find as I'm getting older is as my eyes disintegrate, reading takes longer than it used to. I used to be able to read a lot more, a lot faster. But now screens have dulled all of our senses. Right now I'm looking at a screen and it's slowly like probably deteriorating my brain. And that's going to just happen until I die. So I'm not going to change anything.
Right.
But the other thing is like if I have a guest on the show, I always try and read at least some of their work. And I've taken a brief respite from having a lot of guests on the show. But for a while there, I was having like a literary guest every 2 weeks, and it was like, I need to cram something in. I because I don't want to just be like that guy. It's like, oh well, hypothetically, I could read your work,
But I'm going to have you on my show.
Right.
Yeah.
It has to be a little better than that. I have to speak from some experience. But I respect fantasy. I didn't grow up. I just didn't grow up as the like Dungeons and Dragons kid.
See, that surprises me.
Does it?
I feel like you would have fit right in. But I mean, that's fair. It's totally fair.
I think I don't know. There's the Call of Cthulhu role playing game, which I never have played in my life, but I feel like I probably could bridge that gap. But again, who has time for any of this?
I mean, that's fair. Yeah, there's no time. Period.
The adult world sucks. That's all there is.
True story.
Yeah. All right. Well, I want to thank you guys for hanging out with me tonight and telling a little bit of the story of Divide by Zero. In the next installment, which is just going to be me as a floating head, I'm going to talk a little bit about the influences of this book. You're going to hear a lot of names from a long time ago because all the influences are long dead. And after that, we're going to start the panel on, I believe it is the 5th. Sam's out there. She's going to scream at me if I got it wrong. But so for 5 weeks, there are readers of the book that are going to come on the show. I will not be on those shows. However, they will be discussing the book in parts, from the Hayden's Court job, which is the first broadcast, all the way through the conclusion of the book. And you're going to hear from people who are actually reading it. So if you're not reading it, you might want to be aware of some spoilers for the later stuff. But on the other hand, you might genuinely get some insight. Yeah, it is the 5th.
Nice.
It's the first episode. I believe it's every other Sunday, something like that. Sam will let us know. Sam's good. And then we'll conclude. There'll be a show where the readers will be able to actually interact with me with any questions they have.
That's cool.
And then we will conclude my channel being kind of just endless pimping of this book. And I'll get back to regular programming. But I need you guys not to lose focus. a lot of good people put a lot of hard work to help bring my vision into the world in a way that you can actually consume it. And their work deserves as much attention as the words I put on the page, really, because the world we live in is a world where things get put on shelves and treasured or resold or handed off to other people who would like it just as much. We really don't care as long as you buy it. But any way you can help us, if you see a post on Twitter involving the book, please retweet that. Retweet it with comment if you really want to go above and beyond. And if you want to really go above and beyond that, make your own tweet about it. If you're on any other social medias, because I'm completely like just Twitter, please, like get word out. And the other thing you can always do to really help us is if you do read the book, Amazon reviews are amazing. And just like when that waiter comes over to you and just bullishly says, hey, a perfect score would really help.
Oh yeah, reviews are so useful.
Yeah.
Can't overstate that enough. Really.
And I promise you, no one is going to look at you and go, did you really think it was that good? I promise you, you'll be okay. Okay, I guess that Jess is getting the final comment of the evening, and that is excited for Lauren's new book. I have read a lot of his other works and love them. Blue Wheel, Bleak December, Visit by Voices Volume 1, which is the short story collection. That I haven't gotten my copy of Divide by Zero yet, but it's coming soon. Well, Jess, thank you. And thank you to everyone out there who's watching. Thank you for everyone that's reading. And we will see you soon. Any final words, guys?
Yeah, thank you everyone for supporting Lauren's work. Like, that's so cool. And Lauren, thank you for having us on your show. Like, we're still
You're amazing. We have to have you back when next time you're promoting something dark-ish.
Sounds good.
We'll have to have you back on to come pimp something else out, okay?
Sounds good. Thank you.
That includes you, Allison, when the sequel's out. We need you back.
For sure.
Okay.
There'll be a lot of dark stuff to talk about for sure.
Awesome. Have a great night, guys, and please read something.
Like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff.
What? Wait. What?
I watched like 3 movies from 2021.